Hello there and welcome back to another review. So keeping with that whole sort of Yes Madam vibe, sort of following on from that film and as well as Royal Warriors, today we're going to be having a look at In the Line of Duty 3. Very confusing, like I've mentioned before, all the Yes Madams in the Line of Duty, they all sort of, if you're not familiar with the whole order of the films, it can be a tad confusing and a bit misleading with some of the titles. I'd never actually seen this film before this release, so it's a great pleasure that I've finally own a copy of In the Line of Duty 3. For whatever reason, just slipped through my net, knew about it, heard about it, but never actually got round to seeing it. As I mentioned before, the series and the film titles can be somewhat confusing. This one here, made in 1988 and starring Cynthia Khan, who largely got her name, it's sort of, with Cynthia Khan's name, it's sort of a hybrid. Michelle Yeoh used to be known as Michelle Khan. You also had Cynthia Rothrock, Cynthia Khan. That's what they did to sort of give the idea. Oh, okay, I know the name Cynthia. I know Michelle Khan was in Yes Madam, Michelle Yeoh, and that's sort of like, it was sort of like a hybrid. How they come up with, like, between Rothrock and Michelle Khan. After making Royal Warriors, Michelle Yeoh decided to retire as she was getting married to wealthy tycoon and money man behind the D&B movies, Dixon Poon. And you have to remember that this was at the height of her popularity as well. Like Michelle Khan, as she was known at the time, she was really getting going. She was really starting to, the films were coming, she was getting more roles, and she actually decided to retire after just only a handful of films really, and she sort of got married to Dixon Poon. And like I say, it was the height of her popularity. The Girls with Guns, and the whole cops and robbers movement was very popular in Hong Kong at the time. So production naturally went straight in on a third movie with the sort of Yes Madam franchise. So it goes Yes Madam, and then Royal Warriors, and then this movie. And I think we can largely blame the confusing titles and names on the sort of the movie's distributors. I think that's sort of where, I don't think it's sort of the filmmakers' fault. I don't think they're the ones responsible here. I think it is largely due to the distributors, because you'd think it'd be Yes Madam 2, Yes Madam 3, and then you get In the Line of Duty 3 and 4, and you're like, sort of, where's In the Line of Duty 1, where's In the Line of Duty 2? It can be a bit sort of confusing to the uninitiated if you're not too familiar with sort of these movies and the titles and things like that. Even I was confused with the titles of these movies back in the day. I was sort of, so where's Yes Madam 2? Where's Yes Madam 3? It can be somewhat confusing. Interesting to note, Cynthia Khan, much like Michelle Yeoh, had not trained in dance originally, and her background was largely, like I say, mainly in dance. She wasn't like a martial artist or a kung fu practitioner or anything like that. Also, with these movies, they don't keep it strictly Hong Kong based. Like with the first movie, we had Cynthia Rothrock. Okay, she was playing like a Scotland Yard detective, whatever, take that with a grain of salt. In the second movie, we had Hiroshi Sanada from Japan, and in this movie from Japan, we get Hiroshi Fujioka, I think is how you say his name, and we also get Michiko Nishiwaki here. This film here had two directors in Arthur Wong and Brandy Yuen. Arthur Wong's reputation was largely very much as a cinematographer, working on movies. I think he worked on Eastern Condors, and I do believe he worked on Once Upon a Time in China 1. Could be maybe a couple of the Once Upon a, but he definitely had something to do with the cinematography of Once Upon a Time in China's. Brandy Yuen of the Yuen clan, Yuen Wu-ping's crew, working on films like Dance of the Drunken Mantis, etc. So there's a lot going on with this movie. We have Dick Wei here as per usual as one of our villains, and we'll just see how In the Line of Duty 3 holds up. But yeah, it's a real pleasure to own this film, because I'd never seen it for whatever reason. It just slipped through my net, and it's just wonderful to actually have a copy of In the Line of Duty 3, and I'm so pleased Eureka have released them. Got round to reviewing, they've only done 1 to 4 at this point, but it's still great to have them. I don't know why they didn't just do a whole box set of them. It would have made it much more completist. I think Arrow or there is a release of this with all the films together, and a lot of people get these confused with the Tiger Cages as well, which adds even more confusion, because you've got Cynthia Khan in Tiger Cage 2, and you've got Donnie Yen in Tiger Cage 2, and they're both in the Line of Duty 4, and it does say, plethora of different confusions with these movies. I think the whole idea was to keep the whole notion of what audiences come to expect, but at the same time try and introduce new and fresh ideas that made it stand out as to what was to come, you know, from what to like differentiate it from what had happened in the series before. Introduce new elements like a new leading lady, new villains, a new setup, but at the same time living up to what had come before. Taking into account the Hong Kong film industry was merciless at this point in the 80s. I mean, there was so much amazing work, there was so many action films, so much talent going on. So like to try and come up with something new that wasn't just run-of-the-mill, that was sort of different to what you'd seen before. And, you know, it must have been hard, but that, say they were merciless in the 80s. The Hong Kong action cinema was just firing. Like every film literally every film that come out was at least good in its own way. And it was just that 80s period of the Hong Kong industry, the Hong Kong action industry. It's just, you know, it's still one of the best sort of time in cinema, not just Hong Kong, I mean the world over. It really was some fantastic movies. But anyway, in the line of duty free. So we meet Cynthia. The great thing is with these movies is the characters usually are named actually after their real name, like what they go by. Like in some of them, Michael Wong's called Michael. Donnie Yen, I think in The Line of Duty 4 is called Donnie. So more often than not, they use their real names as their character names. So she is like new on the beat and goes to give this guy a parking ticket, and he is having none of it. And for some reason, loads of people are just sort of standing around watching. And he basically tells her to go and eat shit, this guy. Sort of not a very nice man. So she's just trying to do her job. This guy runs up to her who's done like a robbery, and she like rips her skirt to give chase, and she kicks ass. So right away, we as an audience are being shown this is a lead that can, you know, she can more than handle herself. She doesn't take no crap from nobody. She's going to be that kind of police officer. And it gets that yes madam vibes right away, especially with the 80s music running throughout. We have Paul Chun here as our boss, as her boss rather. You mostly remember him from sort of Fist of Legend. I brought him up. He was also in my Wild Search review. Royal Warriors, he was in that briefly. He's probably mostly well known though for being in Fist of Legend. I'd probably say that's what most people remember Paul Chun for being in. And it's his major crimes unit. He has unsolved cases, and Cynthia is tasked with helping. Then we go to this like jewellery event, which seems like something more suited. this like jewellery event, this showcase, it's very much something that it looks like a Duran Duran video or something like that. It's something like, it's like the New Romantics or something from the 80s, this whole look of this like sort of event. I say it really just screams like a Duran Duran video to me. We meet Michiko here and her partner Nakamura, and her introduction is like snogging a guy and then stabbing him. So this is like one cold-hearted killer we got going on. This whole sequence does play like something even out of like a Bond movie, sort of where they're ambushing this like sort of event. We meet Hiroshi and his cop partner sort of testing each other with their guns in the bathroom. So Michiko and her buddy throw some gas canisters and start machine gunning everybody down at this jewellery event. And you just look how fast and frantic and kinetic sort of the gunfight and the gunplay is here. Truly amazing stuff. And our robbers sort of swing out the building on these sort of like rope things. So they've just sort of taken this jewellery. So Ken, Hiroshi's buddy, gets shot and our robbers make off with the jewellery. Ken's family are grieving in Japan. Hiroshi naturally wants payback. We learn that Michiko and her buddy are doing it for the Red Army, and she goes to cut both their arms, and then she starts kissing him. There's something very sadistic about these two, like sort of they got I don't know, they're just a bit too intense with what they get up to. She sort of goes at one point, like I say, to cut both their arms, and then, like I say, they start kissing. So we have, but like the whole political notion thrown in there as well as with these two sort of very sadistic killers. Out of nowhere, they go to have sex, and his hair falls out. So we learn that he's sort of ill. He's sort of finished with her, and she sheds a tear. Hiroshi resigns and is after Yamamoto, who was like, it was his jewelry event. Like he was the guy. It was sort of him behind it. It was his sort of event. So our robbers kill a guy and take his bow, all the while kissing as they blow up his barge. They got a thing for kissing, these two. Like it's almost like they get off on what they're doing. Like they seem to be enjoying it a bit too much. Like seems like everything they do whenever they kill a guy or blow something up, they're just like kissing. Cynthia at this point wants a case, and they sort of tell this guy who is buying guns, and a shootout ensues. She chases after this guy, and great moves here, fast and fluid as you would come to expect. And Cynthia Khan sometimes very much not forgotten about, but like when you talk of sort of female action stars from the 80s. Most people just sort of remember Cynthia Rothrock or Michelle Yeoh, but Cynthia Khan definitely was, you know, more than could handle herself. Very talented, you know, wonderful. She gets to shine, I think, more in the Line of Duty 4 Witness. I think she gets to show her stuff a lot more, but here she's more than capable. But fast and fluid, as you would come to expect, though. I say she's after this guy, but this guy does at one point randomly seem to keep on walking into things for some reason. Like there's two or three instances where he just starts, like first he walks into a beam and then he walks into a van. And the whole idea being that this arm ring is connected to the Red Army, which just reminds me of sort of the Red Ribbon Army from Dragon Ball. Whenever I hear the word army and red in the sentence, I just think of the Red Ribbon Army. So Michiko goes to see Dick Way's character, who has a thing for like remote control helicopters for some reason. You know, like all like Bond movies have got a gimmick, whether it's sharks or whatever it may be. Dick Way's thing is sort of remote control helicopters. She's basically there to give him the jewelry in exchange for arms in Hong Kong. The pieces she has turned out to be fake. So now they want Yamamoto too, because it's like, what's going on? We stole this jewelry. It's fake. What, you know? So they're PO'd basically. So Hiroshi arrives in Hong Kong. You just have to love this guy's perm, and wasn't this guy sort of like the Sega Saturn mascot back in the 90s? I may be wrong on that, but I could swear he was. I could have swear this is the same guy, and he was like sort of the mascot, or had something to do with the Sega Saturn back in the 90s. Melvin Wong turns up in this film too, and he's like the security officer for Yamamoto, who is on vacation in Hong Kong. Look out for Stanley Fung and Robin Shou too, in very small blink and you miss it roles, but they do crop up very briefly, but it is literally blink and you miss it. They're there and then they're gone. Paul Chan wants Cynthia just to humour Hiroshi from Japan and basically waste his time, and they don't want him making trouble, a bit like sort of what Chris Tucker is assigned to do in Rush Hour with Jackie Chan. So, of course, he brings a framed photo of his dead partner and a great big F-off gun. He's got a massive gun. His thinking is Yamamoto's connected to the Red Army and that he can like get clues on his partner's killers from him. Then Richard Yuen turns up whilst they're having a meal he turns up in like yachting gear, which, I mean, Richard Yuen is always hilarious, but out of nowhere he just turns up in this film. And like saying he's a ninja as well. Then Eric Sang turns up as well in a small cameo, and you have to love how they try and cross elements of the Lucky Stars movie with like a violent cop actioner. It seems so out of place. Don't get me wrong, it's great to see Stanley Fung, Richard Yuen and Eric Sang, but it does seem totally out of place. But anyway, it's a fun little cameo. Just say why they tried to squeeze him in this film, I have no idea. I mean, it's cop action with sex and God knows what else in it, but they like to cross it over Bridget with the Lucky Stars. So Nakamura, Michiko's partner, catches up with Yamamoto in a club and wants cash within 3 days. It's always 3 days, isn't it? It's never I want it tomorrow, I want it this afternoon. It's always I'll give you 3 days, because he basically cheated him as the jewelry was fake. Hiroshi spots Michiko again using her real name here, so he goes after them and they get away. And I love how he isn't even meant to have many guns, yet he has probably the biggest gun. He's not meant to have weapons full stop, but he's got probably the biggest gun I've ever seen. So he goes under questioning but escapes after like pretending to take a suicide pill. Yamamoto gives Robin Shou and another guy like a sort of a royal telling off, and they're like, you know what, find somebody else to protect you. They've sort of had enough. Fujioka gets to him and interrogates him by beating the crap out of him. Yamamoto gets shot to pieces by Michiko and Nakamura. Cynthia gives chase and they have a nice fight, like a kid's playground. It's very akin to something like Police Story 2, but it is a bit wasted here. They're at a kid's playground, but they don't use it as much as what I thought they were going to. I thought they was going to incorporate a bit more. It is a tiny bit wasted. They drive off in this lorry full of loads of empty cardboard boxes for some reason. Hiroshi jumps on board, who is handcuffed at this point, I might add, and tracks the guy down to this like boating house, and we have one hell of an intense fight scene here between the two. And it really is basically, this fight that you see here really is as brutal as they come. It's it's really, really good stuff. I'd say it's got that 80s Hong Kong action, the cops and robbers thing, and you sort of running through it, and it's all the better for that. Metal pipes, hooks, you name it, and they both get totally messed up. The place blows up, as these places always do. It doesn't matter where you go. It doesn't even matter if there's any explosives or TNT there. These places always do blow up. Michiko and Dick Way attempt to break Nakamura out of an ambulance as he is on his way to hospital. So he falls out of the van and gets run over. Michiko blames his death on Cynthia's character, Madame Jung, as she's known, but I will say that Michiko does put in an amazing performance in this movie, and really is a film that makes her shine really well. As opposed, like if you look at things like God of Gamblers and Lucky Stars, where she's only in it sort of briefly, here she really does get a lot more screen time. You get a lot more of her acting, and she really does shine really well throughout the movie. Dick Wei's like sort of, I will help you get revenge at this point, and his subtle plan is to just drive at Cynthia. He's like, I'll help you get revenge. So I thought they were going to brainstorm a plan or come up with something really subtle and make, you know, like a calculated chess move. No, he just drives at basically Cynthia whilst shooting as she comes out of the police station. Don't you just love these well thought out plans, and have a great nice little fisticuffs between the two here. Of course there is still comedy going on with Paul Chun moaning that he got shot in the arse at one point. So they deliver a bomb in some flowers, and the whole Yamamoto plot line has all sort of gone out the window at this point. Like he's sort of neither here nor there. They lure them to the hospital, and for some reason Paul Chun and Hiroshi are in the same room together. Dick pulls out his remote sort of controlled helicopter and attempts to fly and explodes this, which kills Paul Chun. I'm not sure where Fujioka goes at this point. So just sort of disappears, even though they were sort of in the same room. I said the Yamamoto, the story with the jewelry guy and everything like that, that's totally gone at this point. It's totally irrelevant. So Michiko phones Cynthia and is like, bring yourself and Hiroshi to the shipyard. And what happens, like, and this like happens super quick. Like suddenly we're right there. As soon as like she says come to the shipyard, like they're there. Of course this is where the final showdown is, and of course Dick Way is present for the finale. Awesome fight between him and Cynthia, and believe you and me, she really does take a beating at the end. Like she really does take some punches and some hits here. Then she has to take on Michiko, who just for good measure is chasing after her with a great big hammer, who eventually sort of blows herself up. I will say the ending to the movie feels somewhat crammed in, like you know, sort of like, right, let's do a quick to the point ending, get it shot and sort of wrap the movie. Whether they were running out of time at this point, I'm not too sure. But sometimes if I crash through these plots, please bear with me and please forgive me, because I just try and give you an idea of sort of what happens. Doesn't even matter if you don't know sort of what I'm talking about with the characters. I just sort of run through it just to sort of give you an idea of what happens, like singling out little things I noticed, didn't liked, or things that just happened that sort of caught my attention. But it does seem at the end it is a bit sort of, we better have an ending, we quickly better do one because we've got a wrap production soon. It does seem very quick. Still great fun, of course, but a lot of things start in this movie and then they're sort of forgotten about. It's sort of, you have the basis, you think, okay, it's going along nicely, and then sort of things just go, like I say, just go completely out the window. Hiroshi and his story and his art gets almost forgotten about as well. Whilst not as good in my eyes as Royal Warriors or Yes Madam, I think this, out of the three up to this point, this is probably the worst. Not the worst one, but it's not as good as the other two, I would say. It's not, I think Yes Madam and Royal Warriors are like tiny bit better, but there's still a lot to be enjoyed here, and it's a great warm-up for Cynthia Khan, who I think would more than excel herself in The Line of Duty 4 from Yuen Woo-ping and Donnie Yen, because that film is better. That film is so good, it's better than it has any right to be in The Line of Duty 4. I will get round to reviewing that soon, but it's an amazing film. But here I always looked at it in The Line of Duty 3, or do look at it in The Line of Duty 3 now, as sort of a like a warm-up for Cynthia Khan to when she went on to do in The Line of Duty 4. But a lot of fun to be had with this one. It's only about 85 minutes. It's a really, it's not one of the longer Hong Kong films. Great villain in Michiko, and just some all-round good entertainment, even if it is just sort of slightly a tiny bit disjointed in places. But don't let that put you off. Please go and check out In the Line of Duty 3, because it's, as I say, it's great 80s Hong Kong actioner that I think anybody in the right mind should have in their collection. So thank you very much indeed for watching. Hope you enjoyed the review. See you again soon.
Don't concentrate on the finger or you will miss all that heavenly glory.